Hello, everyone, and welcome to PR Explored. I'm so happy to be back today with a wonderful guest who I will introduce in just a minute. But I just want to welcome you to PR Explored, the video podcast where we delve into trends and topics related to public relations. I'm your host, Michelle Garrett, a PR consultant, author, and writer. And my guest today is the fabulous Amanda Milligan. Welcome, Amanda.
Thanks, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me. I love to talk about all these PR related topics. Even though I've never specifically worked in PR, it's so funny how I've always been tangential to it. I've always been around this field.
Well, I think that's really how, you and I met through content marketing world, through that community. And just remember our mutual friend, Michelle Lynn, telling me, you really need to meet Amanda. and
Yes.
boy, was she right, because, it's been, I've just so enjoyed our friendship over the years, and I've learned so much from you. And
Likewise.
yeah, it's a good thing. So, and Amanda is a wonderful person in addition to being a very knowledgeable
Oh,
person. So,
thanks.
um, please follow Amanda. I will put her LinkedIn and her site up here in just a second. But I want, before we get into the topic, which we're going to be talking about brand authority today and PR, I want Amanda to talk a little bit about herself and tell us all the latest and greatest. Anything you want to share with us, Amanda?
Sure. Well, thank you again for having me. I have been in the industry, and by the industry, I mean like mostly content, SEO, and brand for about 14 years now. And most of that was agency side. So I've worked with all kinds of companies. Like people ask me, and I'm like, I literally don't know how to narrow it down. B2B, B2C, all company sizes from solopreneurs to enterprise. I've worked with everybody, um, which has been a really interesting experience in terms of understanding like the trends on all of those different levels. Like you see different things happening from between SaaS and e-commerce and startups versus those more established companies. So it's been a lot of fun. I've also had a few stints with a very meta job of marketing agencies, which helped me get like a little more well-rounded in marketing outside of I came up in the industry through content to see how content impacted other marketing initiatives because I do think it's one of those things that fuels a lot of different channels and a lot of different marketing goals. So that was really insightful too. So a year ago, I started, you just shared the link, thank you, Brand Authority Club, which is my consulting business, but also trying to build a community for people who are like minded and caring about brand authority, which I know is our topic today. So we'll get more into that, but who are kind of rallying around this concept of let's go back to some of the marketing fundamentals that have been lost over time.
Mm. I think backing up for a second, a marketing agency, man. I think
It's
we could
so
talk,
meta.
we do a whole hour on that, but
Yeah, for real. Yeah.
that's an interesting one because I've had people say to me, "Wow, that agency does a good job of marketing itself or doing PR for itself or whatever," and I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, it's like the shoemaker's child, like they have no marketing, or they try to they're too focused on their winning awards and I don't know."
Yeah. And I mean, I get it because it's marketers are a tough audience. We're, we are probably the most, scrutinizing for good reason, right? Like we know the industry, we know how all this works and we want authentic communication. And so unless people are really going to invest in that and are going to care about that, like
Yeah.
none of the standard, checkbox marketing stuff's never going to work on other marketers for God's sake. It's just not going to fly.
No, it's a tough gig. I've had a couple of those over the years myself, so I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, it was. I definitely learned a lot, and I appreciated it, and it's what allowed me to try it. Like I started my own podcast, and I was speaking at conferences, so I absorbed. I learned so much from others in that time period. There was a lot of listening, and just trying to get into the mix of these conversations. So it was very valuable to me personally as well, just to be a part of that kind of like thought leadership community. And yeah,
You were speaking everywhere. I remember that.
I was on the circuit for a year or two there. And then it's been like a couple of years really since I've done that stuff. I just spoke at State of Search a couple of weeks ago. It's the first time in years that I've spoken on a stage. So that was fun, but I had to get back into it. I had to remember what it's like to, talk in front of whether it was, 50 people or 500 people. It's always nerve-wracking to me.
I find it super nerve-wracking as kind of a extroverted introvert. I'm always, you got to kind of push me out there a little bit. I love the networking at events, but the speaking
Yeah.
in front of crowds, I'm like,
I know. It's tough. And that feeling I get right before, like there's few things that give me that adrenaline rush where I'm just like truly feeling sincerely nervous, which I guess is a good thing. I guess you're supposed to continue to challenge yourself in those
yeah,
ways. But you're
yeah.
right, the speaking helps with the networking, I've found, because it gives somebody a
Mhm.
reason to walk up to you and have something to say and spark that conversation. Same vice versa, if you see a speaker that you like, you have something to go talk to them about. But
Yeah.
uh, so in that way, it was nice. But I do miss events. I'm going to try to go to more next year.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's work, it's money, it's time, it's
I
all the things.
I know. All right. Well, let's get into this. I want to first today we're talking about brand authority, which is Amanda's probably her favorite pet topic. And I also want to just mention that she hosted a conference in September called Authority Fest, right?
Yes,
And I
yes.
went and it was fabulous. And so she does another one. I would say definitely sign up for that because the speakers were great. But it was also just Amanda drew such a great, like, you drew such a great group of people, attendees. I thought the community, the networking was really good. Even if it was an online event, and that's really hard to do that. So,
Yeah, that was first of all, I appreciate that. Secondly, that was great feedback to get because that's how I feel. I mean, I've been working for myself for a year, right? And I am very extroverted, so it's easy for me to get a little lonely in my silo, my little corner of the internet. And so I'm trying to think, just speaking out loud. Right now, we have a Slack group, but I think that Brand Authority Club, I mean, has a Slack group. And
mhm,
I think people are kind of just sick of there's so many Slack groups already. And I think there's a little bit of fatigue there. So I'm trying to figure out a way to repurpose that into something else that is more kind of like still community based, but
mhm.
tapping into those things that worked in Authority Fest. So I'm actively thinking about this and something I'll probably publish something about this in the next couple of weeks of like how this is going to evolve. But yeah, if you want to follow along and join what these different iterations,
Mhm.
sign up for the newsletter because that's where I'm going to share all this stuff.
Okay.
um yeah, because it's going to keep evolving. I tried the Slack group. This is so much of marketing, isn't it? It's like being okay to try something, and if it doesn't work out, moving on. And
Yes.
I love the Slack group. There have been some really great conversations in there, but I've gotten feedback from people that's like, I'm just in so many Slack groups. Like, how am I supposed to keep up with this? And I'm like, that is so fair. I have like 10 on my
I
sidebar.
know.
I don't know. So I've just been thinking about it, and I really liked the speakers that I was able to
They were
secure for the
great.
event. And so I'm like, maybe there's something we can do monthly or quarterly here where it's more of a
Mhm.
conversation, more of it.
Yeah.
But anyway, I stay tuned. Stay
Yeah, no,
tuned.
I thought it was really great, and I was really glad that I spent the time, and like I said, I knew if you were organizing it, it would be great, but, like, how you wanna support people that you know and like and trust, but also it really was great, so it
Thank you.
actually exceeded my expectations, so that doesn't happen. That does
That
not happen all the time.
music to my ears. Yeah, I mean, I've never played an event before. That was my first one, and there was a ton of technical difficulties, and yet I was so happy with, yeah, the people. I was so everybody who contributed and who was in there were asking amazing questions. The speakers had so much interesting stuff to say. But again, it was because these speakers were aligned in the authority side of stuff and all different angles, like talking about why blogging still matters or talking about how to do Reddit marketing, like things that I had questions about.
Mhm.
And that tends to be, that's the nice thing. When I was marketing to marketers, I was like, well, at least I know what questions I have as a
Yeah.
marketer. So
That's
it's
what I've
easier.
always done as far as my blogs and articles and things like that, is just like, what am I trying to figure out, you know? And so, I figure if I'm curious, interested, that other people will be too, and
For
then you
sure.
talk to the people, that you trust in the space, and, you know, that I think, or you look at what they've already said or written or whatever, and that helps inform, you know, like, what you're thinking and everything. So I thought the speakers were really good. Like I said, this isn't like my, you know, the core of my work, but it's
Yeah.
important in my work. And there were things that I took away. And I've always felt like with content marketing and brand authority, and you know, PR we need to be paying attention to that stuff. And I feel like a lot of times it is kind of siloed, and people aren't really, you know, there are a few
Hmm.
people here and there in PR that will, you know, be experts or specialists in these areas, but I don't feel like as a profession, we're really very well-rounded in some of these areas, and that's kind of why I started doing this, because I like to talk about these topics that relate to PR, so
Absolutely. And I think it's, I don't know if you're observing this, but lots of thoughts about LLMs. But one of the things that I think is interesting and positive is that it's almost forcing people to reckon with the silos, because a lot of the LLM focused strategies cannot work unless multiple departments are working together on it. And that, I think, if we can all seize that and
Mhm.
see how we can apply it to other areas, because I love that. It's not just PR, right?
Right.
Brand, SEO, they're all just
Yep.
operating in these independent areas. And it's like, this is not how it's supposed to be. So if LLMs are demanding people to care about third party authority signals, they have to care about PR. And suddenly SEO and PR are more connected than they ever have been, or they're moving in that direction. So I'm hoping that that's like a trend that lasts.
Yes, and let's get rid of the link builders, though. That's the digital PR term is, for me, sometimes synonymous with the link builders, and that's I'm kinda glad to see that not being as important. I hope, I mean, in my view, I feel like it's not as important now, but I don't know.
I don't think it is either. I think a lot of this is I'm just getting into it now, so I'm sorry if I'm
That's
skipping
okay.
around, but my issue with everything is there was an article, let me see if I can find it. There was an article in Intelligencer uh like in July. And
Okay.
it was called like the media traffic apocalypse.
Okay.
Did you see this article? It
Uh,
was,
was it Casey Newton?
I don't remember. Hold on, it was to me extremely validating. It was by
Okay.
Charlotte Klein, and it was basically, it had lead editors at some of the country's biggest publications essentially kind of acknowledging the situation that they're in, because the publishing arena has dealt with its own ramifications of AI overviews and everything, right?
I
They've taken a
found it.
massive, awesome, they've
I'm gonna
taken a massive hit.
put it in here.
And I highly recommend everybody check this article out. And there's basically an editor of the New York Times, I'm paraphrasing here, it's not exactly a direct quote, but these editors basically saying like, yeah, we should have made more direct lines to our audience. Like we should have set up, whatever, what programs, email it, whatever it was, to connect with our audience, but we were not forced to reckon with that. And it was this feeling that I've had for years of their marketers know, PR folks know that there is like a different layer of just appealing to your audience that maybe is not as easy to monetize or as easy to measure,
Mhm.
but that is critical. However, we weren't being held to that as part of our success metrics, and thus we could not prioritize it, even if if marketing departments knew that it was important. If it wasn't driving traffic, then they couldn't get justification for it. And I think links fell in that category. Links you could measure.
Okay.
And you know what I'm saying? So like, yes, brand mentions, you know, people knew that mattered, but you couldn't as directly tie the impact to revenue. At least with links, you could see, oh, okay, like the domain authority is going up, and that made people excited. And it was
Yeah.
literally just, if you had the metrics, it was easier to get the buy-in for it. And that's the other thing that I'm hoping that this LLM craze is doing, because there all of a sudden visibility is the hip thing to talk about when that's always mattered. And now it's getting its flowers, and I'm like, finally. But it's still hard to measure. But now, because LLMs
Mhm,
are trendy, it's sort of
mhm.
being like, people are okay with it not being as, and now tools are kind of like figuring out better ways to measure it.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting to me. And you just saying the backlink thing, because really, what was the point of backlinks? It was always to get, there was the brand mentions, but from the SEO side, it was, oh, but you're telling Google this site is authoritative, and so your rankings will increase.
Mhm.
That's the same, like brand mentions, all this stuff. It's just creating authoritative stuff and getting mentioned.
Yeah.
That has always been the core of it. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting to see how things are evolving.
But it used to just drive us crazy on the PR side when, the client would you kind of insist on a link, and then you'd have to go back if they didn't put one in to the media outlet, and they'd be it was a terrible situation because, we couldn't win because nobody was nobody liked
Yeah,
liked it. So, but yeah, I always felt like it was kind of like, well, yeah, who cares about that? Because like they're gonna go if the story's interesting, they're gonna go look at your website anyway, like right? Or I don't know, or at some point it might take 20, touches or whatever for that. But it's all that's the thing about it. It's hard when you say how do you measure PR? I'm always like, yeah, I don't know. Like it's a tough question. You can't measure it in a vacuum because there's all these other things contributing to whether or not somebody goes and looks at your site or buys
hmm,
from you or whatever. So I think I like this too that it's all kind of forcing a change, but not everybody is there yet. That's the
no,
thing that's frustrating
yeah,
because I just was on a call with a prospective client and they had some expert in the meeting and they were like asking me about how to measure and like how, and I'm like, I don't the
yeah.
things they were asking about were I'm like, "Does that is that
Yeah,
still important?" I don't know. So
no, you're right. And that's why I got this impulse. I'm like, I just want to talk to other marketers who feel the same way that I do, because I needed to almost validate for myself that this was a possibility. Because honestly, at this point in my career, I was like, I don't really want to work for companies that don't get it at that level.
yeah, right.
And like, I don't, I just don't, it's too exhausting. And I don't like being commoditized as a marketer to be like, if you don't hit these metrics, even though I know I'm doing good work and I know
Mhm.
I'm building authority for a brand, it
Yeah.
was just getting very exhausting. But um, I actually got to the final round of interviews at a job uh, a while back, and they were kind of like, okay, we like you. It's down between you and one other person, but can you explain how you would track A, B, C, D, and E? Um, and without going into a ton of detail, it's like, I actually don't think you need to get that granular with tracking for those specific things. I think that those metrics are used for understanding directionality if you're doing the
Mhm.
right things, but I wouldn't get so caught up in, making sure that you're able to measure them all. And I was like, I knew when I sent that back, I'm like, I'm not gonna get this job. I was like, but I had to be honest with myself and be like, I don't want to do that. I'm not interested in spending
Yeah.
half of my time
Yeah.
trying to map every single little thing that I do to
Yep.
revenue. I'm like, yeah, obviously metrics matter. Obviously, we're trying to make informed decisions and we're using it to learn about our audience. But like, I worry that there are some places that are just very data obsessed. Actually, the keynote at State of Search in Dallas recently, Carolyn Shelby gave the first day's keynote, and she talked a lot about this, about how data obsessed. I don't know if I guess PR maybe didn't have the same obsession, but
Mhm.
SEO definitely did, and marketing definitely did. Of like,
Mhm.
if we cannot measure it, it kind of lost its value.
Mhm.
And she's optimistic that it's going to swing the other way, and I am too. I mean, I hope, because if not, we're screwed. It's just, and by we, I mean companies too. Like we
Yeah.
gotta start thinking about things a little more holistically and a little more like just caring about the people we're trying to help.
Yeah, well, I just don't think people take like the big picture long view. A lot of times they're just interested, and it happens with PR too. They just want to get the product announced. They just want to get in this publication. They just want to get this many, mentions or and I'm like, "Well, yeah, but what about your overall, like, brand reputation?" And, like, it's gonna be important for you to build trust with your audiences. You need to be out there doing things. It's not just about, your next product announcement. It's about, there are other things here that matter, So that's the kind of client I wanna work with is,
Hmm.
clients that understand that. And if we aren't on the same page, it's probably not gonna go very well, and it's probably not really gonna be a good fit. So, I mean, I definitely have gotten more, honest even with myself about it. It's like, well, it looked good or it sounded good, but then when I talk to them, I mean, if they really are asking for things that I, in good faith, cannot, promise,
Yeah.
I'm not it's not gonna work, and they're gonna be unhappy, potentially, so and I'm gonna be miserable, so it's not good.
Yeah, it's not worth it too, because you're right. I mean, I would be miserable too if it's really difficult to know you're doing great work and to have it just kind of brushed under the rug because it
Yeah,
doesn't meet like some kind of arbitrary metric criteria or something, you know?
yeah, yeah,
It's for me it can be demoralizing. So,
yep,
yeah, you got to kind of protect yourself in that way. But and that's why I really do hope that little by little I'm like, let's make the most use of this LLM craze and
yeah,
be like, yeah, visibility does matter. Let's talk about what are the signals. It makes sense that LLMs are looking at third party ways to
mhm,
verify if you know what you're talking about. Like that's what
yeah,
people do. We search for something, even if we start with Google. I'll cross check it on Reddit or vice versa, and then I'll ask my friends, and then like search has always been more complicated, and it's just getting even more complex. And we just need to think about it that way. And PR plays such a critical role in building that brand reputation and being a discovery access point for brands.
right.
And it just needs to be recognized as more than just as the link, right?
Well, we got off on a tangent there, but that's hopefully people will get something out of that. I mean, I'm glad to know that, because I really respect your opinion, so it's good to know that I'm not like just, you know, seeing this stuff and that you actually are seeing it too. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
well, let's go back
Yeah, get me back
because
on track, Michelle. What are we?
oh, it's all good. All right. So let's just define brand authority. Even when I was getting ready for this, I was looking up definitions because I'm like, how do people define this? Because I think people misuse terms a lot, or maybe they just misunderstand what it is, or maybe people have just different, ideas about what it is. So what is your definition?
Yeah, I had the same experience because I was throwing that phrase around and realizing that nobody had really defined it, or there wasn't an agreed upon definition.
Hmm.
I have a it feels like a dry definition, but it's what I like fundamentally what I think it is, and I think it's demonstrated and perceived expertise by your
Okay.
target audience. And there's a reason why I say demonstrated and perceived uh,
Right.
by your audience in your target, subject matter and beyond. So demonstrated and perceived because like you have to put in the efforts to demonstrate that, but it also needs to be received in the way that you intended by your audience. And I think that this is the connection of like, okay, let's not just put stuff out there and hope that it's working. It's like, is
Right.
it actually resonating with the people who we're trying to reach? That I think is key. But yeah, it's showing that you understand your field. And in a lot of cases, even going a little bit beyond that, not beyond your field, but beyond your offering, your product or your service offering, that you care about the industry and you care about your audience as well. So it does get confusing. People will mix it up with, I mean, now Moz has a brand authority metric, for example,
Yeah.
that's dealing specifically with search. And then people think about domain authority, which is also just like a very SEO specific thing. But for brand authority, we're talking much more zoomed out. It's more of a brand side concept of like literally how is your target audience thinking about you? Like that's the simplest way.
Okay. How is your target audience thinking about you? Yeah.
Because visibility is what the step toward authority. People have to know about you first, right?
Right.
But they still, authority is getting to how are they thinking about you? If they see you, is that visibility changing the way that they perceive your brand as a result?
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
The writer in me always wants to take notes and like pull out little nuggets. um, well, the next, and we've kind of talked. What you said kind of already covers this, but let's go there. How does brand authority fit into PR and comms and what we are doing? How do you view that?
Yeah, I mean, PR is a core way of continuing that conversation outside of just the core offerings, right? And again, that word conversation, because somebody can sit there and talk about themselves. A brand can sit there and just say everything at once,
Right.
which is great. You got to start there. But unless
Right.
anybody else is sort of validating that those things are true, then it's not necessarily going to get you very far. I mean, think about it, even like the most authoritative sites have had validation eventually because somebody's recognizing, oh, this is great content, or oh, this is a great service. So whether it's, a review, management strategy, whether it's getting mentions, appearing on relevant podcasts and talking about these things you're talking about on your site, whether it's getting those media mentions and industry specific publications, people need the third party validation. They constantly search
Right.
for that no matter what they're looking for. So
Yeah.
PR is a critical piece of the authority puzzle. And some people will get it naturally, but most of the time, especially if you're in a competitive industry, your competitors are out there hustling for more recognition than you, right? So it's combining the PR side of things with the value add. Like what are you giving that
Hmm.
is PR worthy anyway? If I'm sure you've I'm sure you've run into this quite a bit where somebody kind of wants to talk about something and it's like, well, that's interesting to you, but maybe not to a wider audience. So there's this
Yeah.
like, like what is the value that you're bringing that can
Yeah.
be then utilized by a PR team?
Well, yeah, and there are certain things that are like interesting or are add to your authority, your credibility, but they may not be PR worthy, news items or whatever. Like maybe you've won an award or certification or something like that in your space. That's not necessarily something like you could certainly write a press release and put it on your site and share it on social media, but reporters, other media outlets are not necessarily going to want to write about that. So that's just one example,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think a lot of times, companies are like, wow, look what we won, or look what we got, or look what we did. And you unfortunately have to like burst their bubble a little bit and be like,
Yeah, but you're right. Like it is still an authority signal. It's just not necessarily one that has to go to the PR side of the strategy. But like put that on your
Mhm.
site for sure. Because when they're scrolling around and they're looking to be like, cool, this sounds good, but are they legit? Cool, this sounds good, but has it worked before? Like those always
Mhm.
help put people at ease, which is basically what you're trying to do. I feel like marketing is about friction. You're trying to reduce the friction. And as much as you can be like, no, it's good, don't worry, it's great. People, we work with people, like we're a real company, we care, the better.
Yeah, yeah, and it takes a lot of signals, the more you can get, the more trust you can build, the better it is. So, yeah, I never look down on those things when clients say, "Oh, here's this thing, what can we do with it?" I'd be more like, "Well, here's what we could do, but let's definitely not.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
Not
USA Today does not care.
no, I mean, like we could always pitch it, but I can't promise that anyone's gonna care unless sometimes trade publications, but anyway, that's
Yeah. Yeah.
um so why do you think if it's this important, because I think we are in an agreement that it's vitally important, brand
Mhm.
authority, why do companies tend to kind of overlook it, or is it because they don't understand it, or
I think honestly, it's a lot of that metric rant I went on. I think that it being so difficult to measure means that you can't really track it in a way that makes everybody feel like, yes, I impacted revenue. And
Mhm,
so people will kind of tend toward the things that are easier to track. But that's why I mentioned that article about the editors kind of being like, well, we didn't have to reckon with it until now that our traffic has plummeted. And people are kind of taking a step back and thinking, okay, we have put this off because we were getting away with using other tactics to get the traffic, but now that it's gone,
mhm,
now we realize, oh, we probably should have figured out a different route to connect to our audience.
mhm,
So I do think I'm hopeful that companies will start to see, like, even if this is more difficult to measure, and using LLMs as that proxy of like, okay, maybe if we start doing prompt tracking and we start to see how we're appearing in LLMs, like that's the first way, one of the ways that people are starting to measure authority really outside of ranking in Google. But it takes away it just being about domain authority, and it's very more specifically about your brand's authority. So I think that was the biggest problem, if I were to guess. And I think we're
mhm.
moving closer to a world in which it is easier to measure. And I have like my own whole checklist of things of like all the
Yeah,
authority signals, which I
yeah,
can, you know,
that's our next
share. But
question.
yeah, yeah, because there is
What's
no
on the
kind of like
checklist?
tool. Yeah. Well, so what I just presented on at State of Search was like my very mini audit that I think everybody should do because it takes 5 minutes, and
Okay,
it's four things you can check,
okay.
and yeah, I'll just go through them. I think that's probably easiest. Okay, so the first thing is going to Reddit answers, which if people listening have not checked this out, it's like the relatively new um, it's the AI function on Reddit. It's in beta
Oh,
still, I think,
okay.
and it released earlier this year. But it is essentially searching all of Reddit for answers to your
Ooh,
questions. So it's just like a little version of ChatGPT. However, go in there and search what is the reputation for and your brand. And Reddit will compile instead of you manually. I don't know if you're like me. I would be in Reddit, kind of looking at a company I'm working with and seeing what everybody had to say. That's still valuable, but this is a way in literally 5 seconds to get like a complete snapshot of how you're being perceived. Then do that for your competitors as well.
okay.
Um, the reason we do this is because it's serving as a proxy for natural, authentic conversations about how people are talking about your brand. There are very few places on the internet that people trust anymore. People don't trust, and this is generalizing, but a lot more people don't trust Google results because of all the affiliates that we're ranking. They don't
Mhm,
trust SEOs. You see these articles coming out, whatever the truth is about any of that or how we all feel, that is a perception issue.
mhm,
Influencers don't have as much trust as they used to. There's just a lot of trust issues, and understandably, so people are really relying on places like Reddit before it gets ruined by marketers. Hopefully, that doesn't happen immediately. But uh,
yeah, well, that's what I worry about when I see people, because I mean, having dabbled in that, I have not cracked the code there, I'll be honest. Just looking at it, I feel like you have to be really careful, and it's I won't say it's scary, but it's intimidating, I think, you know?
it is intimidating, and I think there is no other place that I'm aware of that is as critical of marketing as Reddit is. And I think that's what's going to keep it authentic for a little longer than the other kind of places that fell fast to just being kind of, inundated with sales stuff. But
Mhm.
they appreciate authenticity more than anything else. So the brands that do well are the ones who are just like, yeah, I work for that brand and I'm here to just like troubleshoot with you. It's not like a salesy thing. But
Can I ask you a question though
yeah,
about Reddit? Because I feel like, and I forget who was talking about this, but I mean, obviously, like Google was starting to favor Reddit in the search results, right? So
yep.
does that make it less trustworthy, or I mean, what do you think about that?
I think that was Google's way of being like, oh, we recognize that. I mean, that what they were seeing that searches were including the word Reddit in them. People were specifically saying, you
Okay.
know, best restaurants, Reddit in Google. And so Google was recognizing they are not satisfied with our results. They are literally using Google to get to Reddit. So they just started serving those results
Mhm.
to at least, have a better user experience. But it was a very telling turning point in SEO because people were like, they don't like what they're getting in Google because they don't trust what they're getting in Google. They specifically want Reddit because they think those are just everyday people saying
Mhm.
what they think, right? And
Right.
that has gotten kind of lost in the, affiliate sites ranking. Not all of them. They're good affiliate sites, but you know what I'm saying.
Well,
But
Forbes is the
right,
one that's
the
not.
ones that have gone off the rails and kind of talked about anything and everything like that waned people's trust. Um, so yeah, I think that Google was just sort of like, okay. And again, I have no idea, but if it was me, I'd be like, well, we need to figure that out. But in the meantime, let's serve Reddit answers because that seems to be what people want. Um,
Okay.
so
Just
that's why this is
curious.
important. But not only is this important to see how people on Reddit are talking about you, but yes, Reddit is also feeding into search and it's feeding into LLM answers in a big way. So this is a huge source of like, you got to understand how you're being talked about there because not only is it happening there, it is affecting two of the major search platforms and methods of search. So definitely do that. If somebody's a marketer or a PR person's listening to this, again, 5 seconds and you'll have a breakdown of how people are talking about a brand. The second mini test is going into your LLM of choice. I use ChatGPT and just doing the old, hey, give me the top 10 brands in your industry, um, and seeing if you appear on the top 10. So I also have like a scoring set up for each of these. So like I have a different score if you're number one versus number three versus number seven versus not on there at all, because
Mhm.
I use it to compare like equal size competitors. But just seeing if you're there, if you're not there, it's fun to ask why not.
Oh,
And the example I did in this presentation was for Lattice, Lattice, and it was like they're like an HR company, like management platform. But they were like, I asked ChatGPT, why didn't you include Lattice in your top 10? And they said, well, it said, uh, it's only started offering its HR side of the platform earlier this year, and all the other ones have been around longer. And to me, that was very interesting because it was acknowledging, yes,
oh.
this does do it, but it's not as established as the others. Which, if I worked at marketing there, I'd be like, we need those third-party signals stat to prove that this
Yeah.
part of our offering is legit and worth including on a top 10 list. So in some cases, some of these brands are going to be like, we know we're one, like we're established, we don't need to do this. But for a lot of them, and then the complicated thing about LLMs is that their answers are always going to be different because everyone's asking things slightly differently.
Yes. Yep.
So it's not a perfect test. And what you can do if you have more time is do alternate prompts, getting into slightly different maybe parts of your offering,
Mhm.
maybe locations, and
Mhm.
seeing how the answers differ. But again, these are like the top level entry points to this kind of testing to
Mhm.
see how you're appearing. But if you see that there's an opportunity, if you're not number one or two, then kind of sitting there and running through these other prompts will give you an idea and literally just asking in response, why did you put this as number one? Why did you put this as number two? you can start to see where are you not having those third-party signals that you need.
It's
You can
easy to
also
go down
see,
rabbit hole with it.
yeah, oh, for sure. Because then you get the whole list of sources it used to come up with that
Yes.
list.
Yeah.
And so from a PR or, SEO or content perspective, you're like, "Oh, we're not mentioned on that list.
Mm-mm.
We're not talked about on that site," and suddenly you have a list of places where you need to be trying to get
Yeah.
into to compete on that side. So that test is a proxy for third party authority.
Mhm.
But I don't know. What do you think about that? And do you have a different way of like when somebody's like, oh, we're not ranking or appearing the way we want to? Like, what do you tend to look at?
I mean, for me, it's often trade pubs because it's B2 I work a lot with B2B companies, and so that's where their buyers are going to find, recommendations and things, and that's what I like about, when they ask an LLM versus searching in Google, although I know people are gonna there's so many articles, "Oh, LLM searches this little tiny bit," and they go, "Yes, okay, but it's growing, right?" And as Andy Crestodina said, when they ask an LLM, they're actually like looking for a recommendation. They're at a different point maybe in their research, or they're getting different answers anyway. So like, who should we hire for X, or who should we buy from for Y? They're actually gonna be looking at the companies as, those are qualified, and we're now going into their site or their blog or whatever, looking at it from that perspective. It's been recommended, and, so that's why I feel like I know people are gonna a lot of people poo-poo the LLM-based search, but I you know, I kinda like it. Like, I kinda, think it's
Oh, it
a
is
good.
growing. It is certainly growing. Like you're right. I've seen the same things. Like technically, the percentage is low, and that
Mhm.
makes sense though because just this year, how much it has grown from January to now. I mean, even on a personal anecdotal level, I was not using it the way I did. The
Yes.
way I'm using it now, I was not using it 6 months ago.
Yes, and I've had potential clients tell me that they found me using ChatGPT, and they ask a bunch of questions and they narrowed it down, and I mean, to me, that's meaningful. I mean, like, again, that is a personal anecdote, but I mean, that wasn't happening before. And then if you look at your site, metrics, you could see the analytics where the traffic's coming from, and it's just better qualified, I think, by the time it gets there. So even if it's a low percentage, it might be a higher conversion rate. So, I mean,
Hmm.
I kind of feel like that's important, but I don't know.
Yeah, and no, I totally agree. And I don't think anybody's wasting their time by trying to optimize their third-party signals that LLMs are using because they're still third-party authority signals. Like that's why they're being used. So
Mhm.
being on those top 10 lists, that's what shows up in search. If somebody's like top whatever software, they're getting G2, they're getting, whatever, they're getting those lists. So it has always sort of mattered if you were there. Now this is just another mechanism in which another source is pulling these different signals in to decide your reputation, really.
Yeah.
So that's sort of why I had that test on there. The last one or the third one you're gonna hate this one is backlinks, but also mentions. Um,
Oh,
this was
oh.
to an SEO crowd. Actually, what is your favorite tool for tracking mentions?
As far as like Talkwalker or something like that, you mean? Or like.
Yeah, it's just like anything, because like basically, I was literally as I was putting this together, it's like I actually
Mhm.
don't want to say backlinks, but I'm in
Mhm.
SEO tools more than I don't
Yeah.
have the access to PR tools, so I'm like, what is the best way for a company to see every time it is mentioned? Like,
I
what's the
mean,
most
I use
accurate tool?
Moz sometimes, I guess,
Okay,
and then yeah, but I mean, of course, I have Google Alerts set up, but I also have Talkwalker Alerts set up, and then I can see what's going on, and I go in and do my own search. I'm pretty, like, you know, I wanna think of a different word to use, but I'm pretty, like, about trying to make sure I find every single potential
that's
mention,
what I
so
was curious about. I was like, how manual does it need to be still? Because I've heard that not every tool is perfect at capturing all the different
no.
mentions.
That's why you need different ones. And then, some other tools will, like media databases, will have a tool that will do it. But again, it's very like, I don't feel like there's one good way to do it. And also the timing. Like sometimes I want to know or need to know as soon as something comes out, because there was an article this week on one of my clients and I was like waiting for it, watch for it. And it wasn't coming up in my alerts. Like I get an email with an alert, but it wasn't there. So then I went out and just searched and it was there. And it had been
Hmm.
just been published, but it like lags a little bit, which makes me look like if I send it 3 days out, the client's like, "Well," I
Yeah.
mean, it's probably not the end of the world. However, you want to know like right now,
No, for
so
sure. Yeah, that's interesting. That I wanted to ask you that because I had no idea. I was like, I don't know if there's a tool that so whatever method anybody uses to be like that's why I was like backlinks because I know that I could you want to pull the last 30 days. For this test, it's basically like comparing the number of mentions you've gotten in the last 30 days versus your competitors.
okay.
And that's about recency. So if we're talking about LLMs again, recency is important for them, but it's also important for authority building overall. Some brands have coasted on a, like really strong authority they built years ago,
Right.
but it's not really a best practice to coast and then hope that it lasts. You should continue to participate and provide value. And so this is a way of being like, right now, are you as relevant and authoritative as the others
It's
in
like
your
the
area?
magic mirror. Mirror, mirror.
Who's the most relevant and authoritative of all? Yeah,
Right,
pretty
right.
much.
And I'm glad you said this because I have seen things about this and also wondered, okay, so yeah, I mean, you should never like totally just go quiet and quit. However, um, how if you haven't like say you got a lot of attention in the media for something you announced or a story that broke or whatever, and it's been a few years, does that mean you might not come up as readily as your competitor that's been in the news more uh, you know,
Yeah,
not
it's
more
not an easy
frequently, but more
question.
recently.
It's not an easy question to answer. And I
Okay.
think, because it's a whole not even algorithm, but like it's a whole kind of calculation of was it so authoritative that it beats out anything your competitors have gotten? If so, it might last a little longer, but I still think
Mhm.
there are some, early studies for LLMs specifically that they do favor recency. Uh, which again, intuitively, I guess that makes sense. Like, I want to see, in the same way you look at a social profile, and if you're like, or a blog, and you're like, they haven't posted in 6 months, that's weird. Like, that's the first kind of thought you have. It's
Mhm.
another friction point of it doesn't have to be that you're hitting it out of the park every time, but people
Right.
want to see that you're still around, you're still doing the thing you're
Yeah.
known for, you're still participating, you're still investing in this. I think that is important. And even SEOs saw that on the backlink side of the media mention side. They were like, yeah, it was great to get something. You would peak though, and then you would kind of dip and then plateau unless you continued to do that work pretty consistently. It was not enough to kind of sustain you for, years and years.
Yeah.
So there is I don't know, there's a continuous, I mean, how do you see that from the PR side? Like how often, how are you creating that momentum
Mhm.
maybe?
Yes, right. That's exactly the word that I use because sometimes, if you're out there, obviously people want to announce their products and services, solutions and things, but beyond that, what do you have? Thought leadership, customer stories, what do you have? What do you got? What can we work with? Where's the meat? That we can keep the momentum going because we can't just, announce and then sit for 6 months and then, that's not really good. And that to me, some of this is common sense and has always been. That's the thing about like stuffing your blog post full of keywords. It never made sense to me. I was like, is this like how can this be the right thing to do? It should be valuable. And again, with like this being like dormant, just letting your account don't post anything for 6 months on social media. Like that's just common sense to me. Like that, that would mean you're not, engaged or active, or there's nothing, you don't have anything newsworthy to talk about if you haven't posted in that long. It's just common sense, a lot of it. And
Yeah.
maybe, that's on the decline as well. So I,
Listen, that's a whole other conversation, Michelle.
some of this really, I mean, this to me, I'm just thrilled that we're kind of coming back to that way of looking at it because I'm just a practical, common sense. I don't
Yes.
necessarily. That's why SEO was always hard for me to really grasp. Is like, why? Okay, I know this is important, but why? Like, how? Like, it just always kind of. It was never. It never really made good common sense to me. That you could
Yeah.
just stuff with keywords and get the top spot on Google and I don't know.
I know. I never loved the black hat side of SEO, and it just felt, yeah, just scammy because it was. And fundamentally, like good SEOs, the common sense part is,
Mhm.
yeah, you need to create good stuff that is valuable to readers and that the machines understand.
Okay.
That was the technical side of SEO. Because you could still be creating great stuff, but if your site structure was terrible and your internal linking was bad, then the algorithm wasn't understanding your topical authority, and then you weren't going to be showing up, which was, you're just missing your entire search audience. So good SEOs understand that the content, like, they understand that the content has to be good, valuable, have what they say now is information gain, meaning something new, not just regurgitating what everybody else is saying, that
Right.
search engines actually reward that. But there were, again, a lot of people who fell into the like, oh, well, if it's moving the needle, even if it's the scammy, that's fine. And that was very short sighted. Those people were the ones who would get penalized, but some people made a quick buck, moved on, whatever. But that was never really like, and that's why the industry got a bad rap because of folks like that. The
Right.
people who take their profession seriously, they're doing the side of like, no, we actually want to create things that is rank worthy. We
Yeah.
want to rank because it's actually the best, and we need to help the Google algorithm figure out what this page is and how it relates to the rest of our site, and what that means about our brand and that sort of thing. But I hear you. I got into this industry at one of the scammiest parts, right before Penguin and Panda algorithm updates came out, and people were just keyword stuffing the crap out of everything. And then
I
suddenly they're like, "Oh no, we can't do that anymore. We need to hire writers." And that was my first job. Was like a panic hire at college.
and now look, people are using AI and that there's going to be a backlash on that. I mean, like I think we're already seeing some of that. You do need
Yep,
human writers, and so I don't know.
it's like this
Don't
weird trend repeating.
don't take shortcuts. I don't know. I just yeah, I used to get like, a brief that would have like these like 20 keywords in a 700 word blog post. I'm like,
Uh,
that's not really writing then. You're just literally like just it's just I don't know. I always felt like, yeah, the audience should want to read it and it should, give them something that, they didn't have or need or wanted to, there should be value there. So anyway, it just I don't know, it
totally.
never made sense.
I totally agree. It was very frustrating as a writer, like every stage I was in the industry, I was like, I don't want to.
Mhm.
Sometimes you would get a directive and just be like, really? That's what we're doing? Okay, sure. But I don't see this working long term, and that's where a lot of people are. If it's worked until now, in the last year, for a lot of people, it stopped working, and so there's an appetite to be like, hmm, how do we change our tech and do this in a way that's more sustainable? So fingers
Yeah,
crossed.
thank goodness. What's the fourth thing?
So the fourth one is, and this one, I use social media for this one. The purpose of this one is to try to figure out if people find your content valuable. So if you're a
Okay.
company that relies on social, this one was the most simple of them all to me, which is just how many followers do you have or subscribers do
Okay.
you have compared to your competitors. Email would be great for this. I just don't have the competitor information. So you can use it as a self check, you know,
Mhm.
open rates, click through rates. You're basically trying to see, are people finding your content good enough that they are regularly exposing themselves to it. They're asking to receive it, right? Because that's a big ask these days. People's attention is all over the place. So if they're subscribed to you, if they're opening all of your emails, if they are following and engaging with your social content, whatever you think is the best fit for your company,
Mhm.
tracking that And if you have the comparisons, like on social, you can see how your competitors are faring and asking yourself, like, what is this saying about what we're putting on this platform? Are we talking to the right people? Is this actually interesting and informative and entertaining? Or are we just kind of doing this as like a distribution play and not really putting enough thought into how it needs to be differentiated for this platform? But the purpose of this mini test is, are people finding our content valuable?
Mhm.
So all four of those combined, right? It's like, okay, is the content good? Are people talking about us recently? Are the third party signals there? Like those are the things we're trying to piece together because they are the big picture of authority. And hopefully if you run these and pick
Mhm.
like 3 or 4 competitors, you can see where like very quickly where your biggest gap might be. To get more into like a full strategy, this is what I do with clients. I'll go through all of them more in depth. But
Right.
you could very quickly be like, oh, it's the third party signals. Like you might be like, our site is amazing. We have great messaging. Our social's killing it, but nobody else outside of our own channels is talking about us. That's a problem.
Yeah.
Or, you are getting some of those mentions because you have a great product, but your site is confusing and like your mission makes no sense. Like you're kind of trying to triage where the authority is lacking. If people haven't mentioned you in the last month, maybe you haven't done anything recently, you haven't prioritized it, or something that a campaign you did 6 months ago that had a lot of traction is starting to fall off.
Mhm.
You're trying to find that quick gap, and hopefully, again, I assign scores to all of this out of a total of 100. So if
Mhm.
you're in a situation where you need buy-in from leadership, show them the score comparisons with your competitors, and suddenly people get very interested in like the FOMO of it all, of like, oh, they're killing it at this, like, yeah, let's invest some money in that. So some of those things have worked for ages. FOMO has always been effective.
Well, and sometimes it's like, it's like, "Yee," like, like they're too focused on it, like,
Oh, I know.
about so and so showed up here. Why aren't we there? It's like, well,
And so
I
you got
think
to
we
use it to your
talked a few
advantage when you can.
months
Yeah.
months ago about how, we might, get there, but, anyway, yeah, it's, it makes a lot of sense, and I think these are easy steps. I love the practicality. Anybody could do this on their own, or get more, in-depth help if they needed it, so.
Yeah, if someone listening does this, let me know because I'm curious, what people get from it and if they have other ideas about these mini audits. Because I love this stuff. I love diving into all the different signals and seeing what matter because it's going to depend on industry too, right? Like you were saying in
Mhm.
B2B, it's going to be different than what B2C folks are worried about, and the numbers are going to be different, and you
Yeah.
know, it can get so granular and personalized in interesting ways. But hopefully, it's a good starting point for people who are like, "Oh my God, what what am I supposed to do right now?" Hopefully, this is like a good first step.
Yeah, I think that's always the thing. It's like people hear something and they're like, "Oh, no, how do I actually do it?" Because it sounds like a good idea, but, like, yeah, the practicality of doing it. So, before we go, though, I did have a question that somebody posted on LinkedIn before that we started today. So I'm gonna put it up here so we can answer this question. So from Dane Fredrickson, it might cut off. Oh no, it didn't. He says, I'm curious how you factor in own video thought leadership into trust building versus earn PR exposure. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
I love that question. And I mean, if you think about it from like the classic piso model, right? They're all parts of the puzzle. Like I don't think
Mhm.
either one of these replaces the other. I think that anything owned helps you with earned, and you tell me
Right.
if you agree, but the more that you're putting valuable content out there, the easier it tends to be to get third party folks to reference you if they already trust the stuff you're creating. If you've done nothing and then you're like,
Mhm.
yeah, talk about me, and they're like, based on what? You got to give us a little something. You can build your own. I think we alluded to this at the very beginning of this chat, where
Mhm.
you can be sitting there. You can build your own authority from nothing. You just sit there and crank out amazing
Mhm.
content for years, and then get all those third-party signals. So owned certainly matters. It does not replace earned because you still even if it's earned is like all kinds of stuff. The comments on your videos, right, is technically an earned signal.
Yep.
All of those things help validate the owned side.
Yeah.
And the more that you're able to validate that, it just helps you grow faster, if anything.
Yeah.
So I look at them as complementary. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, well, I love the peso model because I that in my head when I'm talking about, PR, I have that, and when I talk to clients, I try to explain it from that perspective too, even if they don't know what it is. Sometimes, and when I give talks, I put a picture of it up because Jenny Dietrich is very generous about letting us do that with proper credit. So hat off to her, and of course I've had her as a guest as well. I just
Yeah,
I
she's
love
great.
everything she does. Yeah, but I she and I have talked about it and how you really need to start with owned for PR because you have to have the owned content to then really fuel your earned media efforts. And then to me, the shared, the social, that would be next. And then if you wanted to do paid on top of that, all the better. So but I think you have to start with own because if you don't have anything there, and even if you get yourself mentioned in an article, they go to your site, you go to your blog, there's nothing there, you go to your socials, you're not,
Yeah.
they are all signals, and they have to be all working together. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think owned in so many ways, like even outside of video, like your site has to look authoritative, right? Like it has to, and that can go down to like technical things. Like, can people find what they need on your site? Does the load fast? Like, there's so many things that can make somebody be like, and just leave. And it's much easier to get any of the third party stuff if you are coming across as an authority in the first
yeah,
place and not making them question whether they want to mention you or not.
I think site is a huge thing for PR people too, because it's like, yeah, I sometimes I work with manufacturing companies, for example, and they are often a little behind maybe in updating their site, but we really want to get that done first because as soon as a reporter we get their attention, they're going to go and look. So I feel like yeah, there's a lot of things that go into it, and it's not like any one.
Yeah, for sure. It's a lot. Maybe that's the only reason people don't do it is because it kind of is like an existential question in some ways, like who are we as a company and how are we different and who are we trying to it's like but those are the most important questions. So uh
Yeah,
it's always good to go
absolutely.
back to those after a time.
Is there anything else? I know we're at our hour here, so I don't want to keep you, but we could probably talk all day. But is there anything else that you want to leave us with before we wrap up?
No, I mean, if this resonates with you, obviously follow Michelle. She's amazing. Has talk about authority. I mean, I think of Michelle as one of the most authoritative PR folks that there is. So, um, follow her. I'm like I said, I'm trying to figure out something on an ongoing basis to connect marketers who feel this way. So, if you
Mhm.
feel this way, again, you sign up for the newsletter. I'm also chronically on LinkedIn. I have a very love-hate relationship with that platform. But add me there. I'm happy to chat more there. But thank you so much for having me, Michelle. And yeah, I obviously can talk forever. So it's good to have an hour cap so I don't just spend my entire day going on and on.
But it's so interesting, right? Like, I mean,
It
I
is.
find it so fascinating. So I really thank you for spending time with me today. And yeah, thanks everybody. I'll be back soon with details about the next episode, which will be coming up in a couple weeks. So thanks so much.
Thank you.